Here are the facts. There are over 3 million realtors in this country, which makes sense considering how on fire the market has been over the last couple of years. However, mortgage rates are now over 6% on a 30-year fixed loan. By comparison, I refinanced my house this past year at 2.1%. Mortgage rates are now pricing first-time homeowners out of the market. As a result, mortgage applications have fallen to their lowest level since 2000. So, has the market topped? According to Redfin, the average home sold for less than its list price for the first time in more than 17 months during the 4-week period ending on August 28th. So, what does this mean for realtors, wholesalers, and fix and flippers? I have one word for you: land. Are you ready to launch your success in the land business? If you are, I want to tell you about the Land.MBA Accelerator program. So many programs teach theory and process, but leave it up to you to figure out how to execute. The Land.MBA Accelerator program is different than anything else out there because it doesn't just teach you what you need to know, it drives you to turn knowledge into action. The Accelerator is an intensive 6-week small group coaching program built on top of our end-to-end video course that goes deep on the most important topics like county selection, pricing, marketing, and more. If you're ready to stop talking and start doing, go to land.mba/accelerator to sign up for a free discovery session to see if the Accelerator is right for you. We still have a couple of seats open for our next session starting September 15th, but they will fill up fast, so don't hesitate. Go to land.mba/accelerator today.
Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to the Land.MBA podcast. I'm here with my co-host Howard Zunder, and I'm his sidekick, David Van Steenkist. What's going on, dude?
What's going on, Mini-Me?
Well, $1 million.
I'm telling you, I'm waiting for you to break out into "It's a Hard Luck Life."
We do not gnaw on our kitty, mini-me.
Wow.
You know, I haven't watched Austin Powers movies for so long. I got to sit down and binge on Austin Powers.
I remember it was when the second one came out. It was in the summertime, and my wife and I went to Cape Cod, and we went to a drive-in. Like, hadn't been to the drive-in in decades. And that was the movie. And it's like the moment the music started, I was laughing so hard I was crying. Just the best.
There's so many one-liners. It just doesn't stop. It's almost, yeah. Yeah, it's great. So, well, let's get into this, man. What are we talking about today?
You know, I've been having a lot of conversations with realtors, fix and flippers, wholesalers who are looking at land as an alternative investment model. So I think it would be really great to just talk about comparing and contrasting the land model of investment versus the more traditional real estate models of single family homes and the derivative things of fix and flipping and wholesaling. And really, we in our pre-conversation, we've kind of nailed it, I think, down to 7 real points of differentiation where which really explain how land can be an absolutely exceptional option for people who have come from those more traditional real estate backgrounds.
Yeah, I agree. I've been having a lot of those conversations as well. I've spoken at a couple of RIAs lately, locally, and you know, we have several clients in our program that are realtors and or fix and flippers who have been very, very successful at adding land to their portfolio. And as we like to talk a lot about when we have marketing discussions, it's not an either or thing. It's an and. It's a synergistic additional tool in their tool belt, additional revenue stream that is congruent to a lot of activities and expertises that they're already doing and they already have. So, yeah, I guess the first key point.
Actually, before we even get into the 7, this is coming from a conversation I had with a fix and flipper yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really starts with just a mindset, because people coming, and this is not a disparaging comment, but people who come from the world of single family homes, when they think of land, they typically think of land in urban areas for the purpose of development.
Yes, absolutely.
And so when they say, all right, well, if I get this land, okay, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to change the zoning. I'm going to subdivide it. I'm going to flip it to a developer, or I'm going to set it up so I can flip it. I'm going to put power in and water in so I can flip it to a developer, or I'm going to develop it. But no matter how you look at it, the end game always ends up being that single family home or some sort of a development project on it.
Right.
And the idea of investing in raw vacant land that may get flipped and never developed is just a little bit out of their experience.
It's
Uh,
very foreign. It's very foreign. They're thinking development, development, development. How do you add value to land without developing it? Well, you don't pay retail for it. So that's the biggest thing is I get deals, I get wholesalers contacting me all the time because they'll see my website that I buy land, and they were after houses and they came across a lot and they got it for maybe 80%, 90% of market value. And that doesn't work in our model. We got to buy it for 30 to 50, maybe 60 sometimes percent of market value.
exactly. I think that, well, we'll just leave it at that. So I think that the context for what we're talking about is that there's a lot of land and it's not all going to be developed, nor does it need to be. In fact, you and I were looking at some stats earlier. So just in the last 2 years, on average across the United States, home prices have risen a little over 16%. And I think over the course of, I don't know, 3 to 6 years, it was, over 22%.
Yeah.
Whereas land doesn't rise in value at that rate, but nor does it fall in value. It's a much
It's
more
much more stable.
it's
And
much more
you look at, and that's a national price because if you look at, there are many individual markets that just went exponential and went up, 30, 40, 50 plus percent just in 2020 and 2021 in the first part of 2022. And, absolutely crazy, unsustainable bubble like rates. And, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but those areas that went so exponential in such a short amount of time are definitely at the most risk to fall as well. And
absolutely.
I'm under the impression, based on everything I read and everybody I follow, that housing prices are going to over. It's going to slowly over the next couple of years. It could take that long. Adjust to about 2019 pre-pandemic price levels. So
Yeah. I mean,
anyway,
there's no question that there's a lot of bubble markets, whether it's because of
interest rates.
previously there were low interest rates. There was a lot of movement around the country down to the south and the southwest. There was a migration from blue states to red states. There were people exiting the cities to escape crime, and so it made markets like where I live incredibly hot. So there was a lot of externalities going on there.
Yeah, did you
But
know Connecticut has the absolute lowest inventory in the country
that
by
doesn't
far?
surprise me. Well,
Yeah.
and there's a couple. I mean, we have had negative net migration for a while now. Young people have been moving out because they just, they don't see the opportunity here. I know myself when I was young, I'm like, I love Connecticut, but I wouldn't want to be here as a young single person. When I'm ready to raise a family, I'll come back. That's
Right, right.
one of
But you've got that goes in the opposite of low inventory.
Yeah, but what's happening is it really is the migration out of the
Out of New York.
complex because of
Yeah.
crime and because of
Yeah.
other things. So people
Yeah.
coming up from the Bronx, from Brooklyn, from Queens, from all over that area, from Manhattan, from the Upper East Side, which is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
They're moving up here in droves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
every house is a competitive situation. All right, let's not get too deep into
All right.
Connecticut,
Good,
but
good.
but I think the point is that, let's get our mindset right. Land is a lot more than just developing, and there are a lot of ways to not only monetize it but cash flow it, even though it's not doesn't have the kind of appreciation that single family homes have historically had.
Right. Yeah. So let's get into this. But you know what? I think one of the points one of the details I think that we need to explain to people who are maybe new to this, if you're a realtor, fix and flipper who is hearing this about land for the first time, is, you heard me talk about buying land at 10, 20, 30, 40 cents on the dollar, and price scratching your head and going, why in the hell would anybody sell you their land so cheap? You want to speak to that? You want me to speak to that?
I'll start, and you can then finish or correct me.
Okay.
There's a heck of a lot of land out there. In fact, let's just get into point number one. It really
Yeah.
is opportunity size. So when you're a realtor or a fix and flipper, more than likely you're working your local area. Maybe it's a neighborhood, maybe it's a city, maybe it's whatever. But it's usually going to be within a car distance of where you are, because you've got to be able to see a house, you've got to be able to assess it, you've got to be able to market it, you've got to be able to help guide the owner into maybe making a few improvements, all of that. So that's your local geography, and that defines the market size. However, with land, there are 1.9 billion acres, to go on our Austin Powers theme, 1.9 billion acres in the lower 48 states. And of that, only 6% is developed, which only leaves 1.8 billion acres to trade in. Now, obviously, not all of that's available. Some of it's federal land, some of it's open space, whatever. But
I think but isn't that privately held land? That statistic, or is it all land?
the stat I got was just general
Okay.
number of acres. But we're definitely talking over somewhere between 1 billion and 1.8 billion acres. It's still a heck of a lot of vacant, undeveloped land in this country. And there are a number of reasons why people might be interested in selling their land and selling it cheap. But two of the most common reasons that we encounter in our most land investors encounter is either it's a person who has inherited a property, didn't even know they had it until they inherited it. Maybe it's in another state. They probably have never seen it. They have no emotional attachment to it. All they know is they're now getting a tax bill every year, which they don't want. And because it's land, it's hard to attract the interest of a realtor. They don't really know how to market or sell it. They haven't even thought about it, and they're busy with their lives. So it just sits there, and then they get their yearly tax bill. And all of a sudden, they hear from us, and we say, "Hey, how'd you like to get rid of that tax bill? Maybe we'll put some money in your pocket." And they're like, "Heck yeah, I'm all over that." So that would be reason number one. Reason number two is somebody went out, maybe with their wife, and they went on vacation, and they loved the area, and they said, "It's so beautiful here. Let's buy some land. We'll put a cabin on it. It'll be our vacation home. Maybe we'll retire down here." Then they go back to wherever they came from. Life got in the way. They have jobs. They have kids. That trip getting to that land is now a hardship. And after a couple decades, they're like, "Look, we're not going to do that. And I'm just getting that tax bill every year, and I'd love to get rid of it." That was my first big home run deal was just like that. It was a 75-year-old guy in Michigan who bought 40 acres in southern Colorado when he was early in his marriage. And very sadly, 5 years before I spoke to him, his wife passed away. And he was never going to go back to that property, and he was so delighted to get my letter. So those are two really common reasons
Yeah.
that people sell their land cheap.
Those are the most common in my opinion. There's anomalies, of course.
Yeah.
Like the home run I did, the unicorn I stumbled upon this year. I did that half acre in near Breckenridge, Colorado, and I didn't even mean to mail that subdivision. It was just got jumbled into the polygon I drew on my mail list creator, and the owner, the guy offered $40,000 on the property, and the owner actually was a real estate investor, but he was a type of investor who represented a commercial company, and they raise lots of capital, and they buy tapes of commercial foreclosures from banks. So when you buy the whole tape, you got to kind of take the good with the bad and the ugly, and the there might be stuff in there that's not really in your lane, but it's coming. So this piece of land he'd had since 2011, just kind of in there. He didn't know what to do with it, and just been paying taxes on it. Kind of forgot he had it, and he got my letter, and he called me and he's like, "Yeah, I looked at the comps up there, and I figure you probably want to make about 3x on these." I said, "Well, yeah, that's kind of the model." And he said, "Well, this is perfect. The average comps up there are about 120. Yeah, and I got a 1031 exchange coming up. This is good timing, so I'll sell to you for 40 grand." So rarely will you get a seller like that, but. And so, luckily though, the 120 was the average of everything. There's lots up there that are on the side of the mountain. The flat ones go for a lot more. Anyway, I sold that thing in 36 hours for 240K, and that was an amazing deal. But
So absolutely. Those are some great examples. So we're going to talk about 7 reasons why we think land is a great opportunity for people in traditional real estate. But the first one that we just talked about, opportunity size.
Yep.
The entire country is available to us as investors. We are not limited to our local area. And while it's not a bad thing to go out and see the land, and you can even go mow the lawn, make it look a little better, put a sign on, do whatever you want, I can tell you that I have never, ever seen a piece of property that I bought or sold, because I live in Connecticut. I do the vast majority of my business out west. It's not really logistically feasible. Doesn't matter. So that entire 1.8 billion acres is available. Now, obviously, you're going to want to build a strategy to reduce that considerably, but it's all available to you.
Absolutely.
Huge
Absolutely.
opportunity size.
Yep.
And one thing that's really interesting, it's opportunity size relative to the competition. So let's get into number 2.
Competitiveness.
Land is great. Competitiveness. So
Yeah.
Dave, please tell us about it.
Gosh, they're statistically looking at that. There's over 3 million realtors in the States, and there are probably, less than, I don't know how many fix and flippers there are, but there's probably less than 10,000 land investors. I would say that would be a very high number. Would say there's
Very
probably a lot less than that, because
Agree.
we have a pretty good pulse
Made
in the
that number
market.
up, by the way.
It's probably less than 5,000. And the fix and flip, wholesaling, and all that, but really everything around single family homes is very, very competitive. There's so much marketing around it. You have all the shows on HDTV that make it look so attractive. Property twins and flip this house and all that stuff. Those are entertaining shows. And a lot of times, and I think all you flippers out there would agree with me, when they put the numbers up at the end of the day, they don't add holding cost and a lot of the other things to give you the true numbers. They're just giving you the high level numbers, but they also don't show you the behind the scenes when the contractors no show, and the contractor that's been working on 5 deals for you and then he got back on meth. And that's not uncommon. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but it's just much more competitive, and a lot more balls in the air to manage.
Yeah, and everybody's going there. And where are all those opportunities? They're in that 6% of land that's developed, and actually only it's centered around certain markets within that 6%. So it's even more concentrated than that. So it's just you're fishing in a very, very densely populated pond.
Very red ocean. Yeah, for sure.
Very red ocean, for sure, with a bunch of sharks on top of it. And at a moment in time when big, massive private equity firms like BlackRock have a strategy to go and buy up a bunch of homes, so creating increasing costs along the way. So
Yeah, you're competing with institutional investors, these iBuyers and whatnot, as well. So sure. So let's talk a little bit about the third point then, simplicity.
Yeah. So we touched on this, but one of the beautiful things about land as opposed to houses is that buying and selling land is a lot more like buying and selling a car than it is like buying and selling a single family home. Single family homes, there's all kinds of laws and regulations around it. And you've got Dodd-Frank and you've got HUD and you've got all these, you got a book full of papers that have to be signed at closing and just it's got to be just so. Not really so much with land. I mean, if you think about buying and selling a car, you break out your title, you turn it over, and you sign it over to me. I give you a check, and I go to DMV. We're done. Land is an awful lot like that. The seller goes and signs a deed in the presence of a notary. We file it with the county, and bada bing, bada boom, I now own a property.
Yeah.
So massively, massively easier and less with less legality than doing single family homes, and that's pretty huge. And by the way, most of this can be done remotely from your desktop. So if it's an expensive property, you probably are going to want to go through a title company. If it's a cheaper property, maybe you do a self-close. You create a deed yourself. We do this all the time. Send it out to the
Yep.
seller. Seller signs in the presence of a notary, sends it back to us, and then we can actually electronically file that deed with a considerable number of counties within the country, all
Yeah.
from our desktop.
And the only thing you don't get with that is title insurance. And on, at certain price points,
Doesn't it?
people don't care. It doesn't really matter that much. And even on our buy side, sometimes we've got properties that are, we pay $5,000 or less for, and that's kind of my threshold. Anything under five, I won't necessarily get title insurance unless if there's huge spread, like, I'm buying it for five and I can, it's a real home run. I can sell for 20, 25,000. Then I'm going to close through title. It's worth spending the extra grand and waiting 30 days to get the title insurance. So, but yeah, very, very, and that's very simple too. I mean, actually sometimes a title close is actually simpler than self-closing. But cause you just have the mental, peace of mind that you know that the due diligence is a little, more thorough. So
Get somebody else to do the work. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the economics have to work. That's all.
yeah, absolutely. So you know what?
Number four.
Let's do this since we're talking about simplicity, and number five is operational simplicity. Let's go right into that and then come back to four.
All right, you got it.
Since it flows. Okay, so operational simplicity. So never lift a hammer, no contractors, no repairs, no maintenance. We most of the time we do nothing. Now there are some specialties. If you're doing subdivides and things like that, and you want to go and you have a really nice property, you want to go clean up the curb appeal a little bit, great. But this model typically, like we said, we never go and see the property. You've never seen one of yours. I've seen I'm approaching 300 deals since 2015, and I think I've seen about five or six. And that's only because there was some uniqueness to them, and also they were of a certain price point that I wanted to go see them myself. But you don't need to, guys. And we talk about operational simplicity, and we talk about the geography, and how from your desk you can flip lots and lots and lots of properties from your desktop. Your physical inspection is hiring a drone pilot or a ground photographer, but hiring a drone pilot to go out there and take photos. All the other due diligence you can do from your desktop online. And so, yeah, let's see.
So you've done fix and flips. I haven't. We talked about it a little bit earlier. But if you want to increase your profit a little bit, you put some sweat equity into the property, which means you're banging a hammer, you're ripping out the walls, you're doing some demolition, whatever it is, whatever projects you want to do. That's time, effort, energy, all of that. The alternative is you work with contractors who are doing it, and you're basically chasing them down all the time, hoping that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to show up. It's a lot of effort. The fix and flippers I've been talking to, when I explain that, hey, we don't do any of that stuff. We just buy it and sell it. I mean, they're like, man, that sounds so good.
Yeah, it sounds too good to be true, but it
Yeah,
it,
it
it
almost sounds
is.
too good to be true. But the secret is, like anything in real estate, is you have to buy well. If you buy well, then you can flip land with enough margin. Uh, you're probably making a considerably higher ROI than on a fix and flip.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm disappointed if I ever make less than 100%
Absolutely.
return.
Right.
Averages are typically 100 to 300%, and sometimes over 1,000%. Um, and you know, you people that are doing sticks and bricks can't wrap their head around that. And you're not improving it, yeah. And I'm not taking any risk because I'm buying it so low. And if I,
And
and in fact, if I get a property where I don't think I'm able to get it low enough, and I'm unsure where I'm able to sell it, then I'll put it on an option agreement and market it with no money, and then double close it. And I've done a bunch of those. I've got one going right now. Um,
you're just leading me to the next question I want to ask you is what's a typical holding time for a property for you, a land?
well, let's see. So if I average everything, my average is about 90 days. But you know, that is, with being completely transparent, that's also averaging in stuff that I optioned, or yeah, that's stuff that I optioned. But there's been several times when I just had something in title and I start marketing it day one while it's in title, and I'll have it sold before the 30 days of escrow is ends. And the it may not necessarily double close, but I'll have it sold, and then it'll close, a couple of weeks after that, or 30 days after that. So still, from the time I'm out of money, it's still closed within 30 days, or not out of money, but have paid my money for the property. So, but that's an
Right. I
average.
mean, it's typically a typical holding period in land is between 30 and 90 days, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, yeah. Now we have a little bit of a shifting market, so things are selling a little bit more slowly, but never more than 6 months.
Yeah.
It's just very, very rarely. I've had a couple of anomalies, but on average, it's very rare that you hold it more than 6 months. But different than a house, you're not out there, man, driving all over town managing contracts. So I mean, to scale the house flipping business, I mean, I think I got up to about 4 or 5 at a time, and keeping 4 or 5 going at all times. But shit, I was working 80 hours a week, and I never swung a hammer on any property, but
You weren't an
just,
entrepreneur, you were just self-employed.
well, yeah, you're driving all over the place to manage your contractors.
Right.
Scaling from there involves building more staff, a lot of overhead. There's guys out there who've done it, but if you're just adding a team and adding contractors, etc., you've got to go manage you got to be out there, not every day, but you've got to be driving around town. You kind of have a route,
You
and
need to know that there's some supervision going on and they can't just go play around and take another project and leave you hanging.
yeah, you're geographically limited. So then, you're paying people all the time. You're taking calls from oh, I need materials for this, blah, blah, this happened. And you're constantly paying stuff and managing all that. And it's very, very time consuming. And it's difficult to scale. And sometimes you have cost overruns and the profit isn't what you thought it was. I have lost I lost 20 grand on one flip. But I mean, I made decent money, but I make a hell of a lot more money in land, and it's such a much better lifestyle because I've got all the back end, all the busy work. It's all outsourced. I have one U.S. based assistant and a couple of VAs that have specialties, and and so my overhead's pretty low, and you scale the business by marketing and then adding staff. You're not running around managing contractors. It's just a much simpler. I don't want to call it easier, but it's just so much a simpler business.
Right. All right, before we go into the next one, I just want to say if you are enjoying this content, we would certainly appreciate it if you would subscribe on the podcast, subscribe on YouTube and on Rumble. Click the little bell there so that you'll be notified when new episodes come out. And by all means, leave comments. We would love to hear from you. If there's anything you want to hear about, leave it there, and we will put that in the queue for future topics. So,
And hit that like button.
hit that like button, right? So it really helps us a lot, and we really love doing this. So we'd really appreciate that. Okay, let's get on to the next one that we skipped, which is interesting because this is one that I think you and I were not exactly on the same page about when we were talking, which is good. Sometimes we don't always have to be on the same page. But we're calling this the topic of control. My assertion is that in some respects, when you're a realtor, the amount of business that you're able to get, or the manner in which you get that business, say such as listings, is more passive. A lot of it happens through networking and word of mouth, and then when somebody has a sale, says, "Oh, I know about Joe over there. I think I'm going to flip the deal to Joe." Obviously, there's some advertising. If your signs are out there and you're showing up in a bunch of the local magazines, or you're sending out some cards in the mail, that builds your brand, so people will think about you in that situation. But nonetheless, even after all those efforts, then you're kind of waiting for people to come to you and say, "Hey, I've got a property that I need to list." Whereas in land, we're much more proactive. We find locations that we like because they match our strategy. We identify property owners that own property that matches our strategy. And then once we build that list, we are proactively going to each individual on that list and saying, "Hey, we see that you own this property, and we are very interested in buying it. Here's what we'd be willing to pay for it," or maybe we don't put the price in there, but oftentimes we do. So we're actually proactively going to the market, soliciting people to sell their property to us. We're not waiting for them to come to us. And I would always prefer to be in a situation where I am taking the action and not waiting on somebody else to take the action.
Yeah. Sounds good.
You've got 2 minutes for rebuttal, Dave.
Well, I mean, I guess whether it's passive or not, it's just a little bit different in that generating leads. I mean, a lot of realtors burn up the phones and cold call, and also send out a lot of postcards, basically, saying something like, "Hey, I sold a house down here for X amount. If you're in the market to sell your house, think of me, call us first." But so in that respect, it's pretty similar to what we do. But I think that it's when we're sending blind offers, when we know the area, when we figure out the pricing, and we can just send an offer in the mail and get it signed and returned, that's beautiful. And that used to happen at much higher rates. But today it does still happen with a blind offer. People will just send it, sign it, and return it. But usually there's a phone call and a negotiation, but you've at least set an expectation. And if they're interested, they're going to call and they're going to talk and negotiate around that number. Of course, many call and tell.
Your effort initiated that conversation. That's moving it from marketing into sales.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas what I'm saying is that let's just say more with realtors, yes, there's a bunch of marketing that goes on. It's just a little bit more about branding kind of marketing to get their name out there, so that when somebody says, "Okay, now I'm ready to sell my house, who's top of mind?"
Yeah.
That person's done enough branding I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to give it to this person because I remember them.
Right.
But it still requires them to come to the realtor versus, we're sending a letter with an offer that they're responding to.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
There was, and I think there's also one other thing here that's significant, and this is more for perhaps the wholesalers and the fix and flippers. Obviously, one of the ways they find opportunities is driving for dollars. That's a lot of effort, especially when gas prices are in that $3 to $5 a gallon range.
yeah,
Um, but the other thing is they send out a lot of mail like we do, although it's generally more of a
neutral,
neutral kind
a
of
neutral
offer.
letter.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm interested in buying your property. Uh, but it takes a heck of a lot more mail for them to generate a single deal versus land.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last statistic I heard was about at least 5,000 offers or 5,000 letters to get a deal. Um, and in some markets, probably closer to 10,000, where in land, it's closer to 1,000, maybe 1,200. And it depends on the price point. If you're going after desert squares, the cheap stuff, you can, and you have just a terms, turn them and burn them and sell them on, terms type of model, that that response and conversion rate is a lot higher, mainly because even if they've called a land specialist realtor to list those, they generally don't even want the deal because the price. Why would they want to sell a $10,000 property when they can sell, several $100,000 properties, whether it's land or houses. So it's very, very difficult to get those sold. So a lot of them have experienced either the realtor doesn't want even want to mess with it, or I'll take your listing. But there's two sentences on a screenshot on the ad. There's no effort put into it, and it never sells and it expires. So that's a big case with the low stuff. And so, I mean, as land flippers do a much, much better job of selling those cheap ones because, hey, if I bought it for $1,000 and I can sell it all day long for 10, well, that's a decent profit. That's worth spending a few $100 on a drone photographer and writing some ad copy and getting it out there on all the ad sites. But for a realtor who's going to make 10% on a $10,000 property, I'm going to make $1,000. It's just not worth their
Absolutely.
time.
The difference
So,
between
yeah,
representing the property and actually being an investor. Yeah.
yeah. But the point is, the it's probably 5 to 1 more mail, 5 to 10 to 1 more direct mail for houses. And of course, we can talk about there's other methods that a lot of house flippers are using nowadays with cold calling and texting, and some of that has migrated into land. But we've still found that direct mail is golden. You don't skip direct mail to do those other things, but you can add those on top of direct mail. All right.
Or land.
Awesome. So let's talk about the data and the market inefficiency.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end here. So one of the things I love about this market is it's just so inefficient, and that creates the opportunity. So anybody who's invested in real estate knows that you win on the buy side, not on the sell side. And let's just say right now that the real estate market has hit a top, and now it's starting to decline because of a lot of external reasons, such as interest rates more than anything, which is pricing a lot of people out of the market. So prices are going down. If you're a fix and flipper and you buy a house and then you do your budget and you figure I'm going to be putting 100, 150,000 into it, and your expectation of return is based upon what you expect the selling price to be in 3 to 6 months. If the market's declining, that could be a real problem for you. That could just eat out your entire profit. Now, we already know that land is less volatile. It doesn't go up as fast. It doesn't go down as fast. But the important thing is if we buy low, then even if the market goes down a little bit, we're still okay because there's so much room in there. We have so much ROI to play with. We can still sell it and make a decent amount of money on it so long as we're not sitting on it for 3 years. And that happens because the market is inefficient. There's so much data, so many comps and data available for single family homes that all parties in the transaction can do that research and really understand what the value of that home is. But that's just not the case in land. There are far fewer comps, and oftentimes they're all over the place. And so for the average person, it's very difficult to really know what the value of a piece of land is. But within the land investing community, that is the skill set that we master.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is too, the things that you're not wondering about with single family homes are, is there access? Is it legal or physical or both? Is there power? Is there water? Is there sewer or septic allowed? That's all installed already. So those things are already, those are no longer variables. But you know, there's a particular county that I do a lot of work in, and there's a lot of cabin lots in that particular county, and it's not too far from a major metro where people will buy those lots as vacation lots with the intent to potentially someday build on them. But they may have an RV and they like going up there all the time. So they'll go ahead and install septic and well and tap the power. So they can take their RV up there all the time, spend the weekend, spend the week, whatever, and use that property. Well, a lot of the lots in those subdivisions don't have any, so there's 0% improvement. Some have a well and a septic and power tapped. Well, that drives, and that brings the value up. But you know what? When you're pulling the data, a lot of times, because I always put in 0% improvements, those lots with power and sewer and everything will still come up, even though I put in 0% improvements. So there's a lot of nuance. That's, you don't have the data. And that's just one very clear example, and then you've got, different size ranges. Does it have trees? All of that can really impact the value. And now if you're sort of in a subdivision with, where there's, their cabin lots and whatnot, it's a little easier. But if you get something that's way out and about, it's very difficult to figure out the pricing, and that's what we learn, and that's what we teach.
Yeah. So if we know the pricing or understand pricing better than the people who are selling the land, better than the people who are buying the land, that is a knowledge arbitrage that we can use to buy at whatever the market price is, whatever the market will bear, but still leave us enough opportunity so that even if the market goes down a little bit, we still have plenty of room to play with and make money on that property, and certainly not lose money on that property.
Exactly. But the big risk you don't have is, with a land flip versus a house flip, is you don't have cost overruns.
Right.
You don't have, I peeled back, I got into the attic and noticed that all the trusses need to be replaced too, not just the roof. Or, you moved a wall and found stuff.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So all right, let's
final piece in this conversation is sort of the one that wraps it all up, puts a nice little bow on everything.
Yep.
Because when you take everything that we've said and you kind of summarize it,
boil it down,
it really translates down to is land gives you a much higher return per unit of effort, right?
It's a much higher return on your time.
Yeah.
And effort. Yep.
Let's just quickly run a couple numbers, right? So if you're a fix and flipper and you do, let's say, 10 deals per year and we're going to call this a $30,000 profit per deal. You can argue with the number, but let's just go with it.
Yeah, even if it's 50,
even if it's 50. So that's at 30,000, that's $300,000 profit per year. 50 obviously is $500,000 profit per year. It is not uncommon that you could do 10 land deals per month, averaging $10,000 profit for $100,000 a month. There are people out there doing that. and
Yep.
that's 1.2 million per year. Now, not everybody does that, but there are certainly people out there that are doing it and doing it, fairly regularly. But let's just be a little bit more conservative and let's cut that in half. So instead of saying they're making $100,000 a month, let's say they're making $50,000 a month. Well, you're still making $600,000 per year, more than the high end on the fix and flipper. But let's cut it in half again. You're still making $300,000 per year. And you're doing, instead of doing, let's say 10 deals at 10,000, let's call it,
5 deals.
so 3 deals, because we've cut it into quarters, so it's like two
Yeah.
and a half deals.
Yeah.
So you're doing,
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
$10. I mean, the numbers will change. The deals, the profit. They're never the same on a deal to deal basis. But the point of the matter is, you can do a lot more deals because you've got the whole country to play with. There's less competition. You're being proactive in reaching out to those opportunities. It's an inefficient market, so if you buy well, you can make that profit margin. And you're doing the whole thing pretty much from your desktop. You can do it from anywhere. We've got people in our group that do this business from Brazil. I've had people doing it from Italy, from England. You don't even have to be in the country. You could be on the beach in Thailand doing this business from a laptop and a phone. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know a guy in Peru, and there was a guy in our group. I don't think he's in it anymore, but he was doing it from Israel.
Yeah.
I remember, hell, Lucas, when he started coaching with me, he started his business from Thailand, and he started it from Thailand as a newbie. Had to figure everything out, and
In the seven-figure area now, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, exactly.
So,
It's
So
It's
I guess
just-
the point is, we're not suggesting that being a realtor is a bad business. It's not. We're not suggesting that you shouldn't do fix and flips or wholesales. But as the market starts to top and starts to come down, it's going to be harder and harder to achieve the number of deals and the amount of profits that have been made over the last couple of years. It really is the time to start thinking about portfolio management. How do I add another revenue stream that's differentiated from that, so I can continue to make the kind of money I've been making before? And we really, really believe, for the reasons we've laid out here, that land is a vertical market within real estate that you should absolutely be considering. And if you do so, we would love to hear from you.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that does it for us today on the Land MBA podcast. Thank you for joining us. And again, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever channel you're listening or watching us on. And we really appreciate this audience. And please make comments and make suggestions in the comments and or on our Facebook group if there are topics that you would like us to cover. And I bid you adieu.
Sayonara.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about Land.MBA, visit our website at, wait for it, Land.MBA. See you next time on the Land.MBA podcast.